Hi everyone, my name is Anil Sedha, founder of Tech Tomorrow, and today I am back again for an in-person meeting with James Scott, field CTO at Dell. And today I am in sunny Ottawa. One thing that I'm seeing is most IT leaders, they have picked out all the security tools, they've implemented sufficient tools and everything else, but they don't have the final act together, which is when you get hit by ransomware and you realize it at 2 a.m. in the morning, yeah, or doesn't matter what time, but primarily when you are not expecting it. What happens in the first 24 hours? You are in field city, you see these things. Can you walk us through that?
I think the first surprising thing is IT typically need to step back. I think there's this assumption that we're immediately all hands on board, and there is some teams within the group, but by and large, you can't touch anything. And again, it depends whether we're dealing with an active attack or whether we're dealing with the aftermath of an attack. And we do have with the Batfire, a lot of customers. Like we're there on retainer. You're there on retainer. Like if they need help, they call us. The bit that I think surprises most people and is I really wish I'd thought about this earlier is the environment to recover into. Again, I think there's a misconception there that we have the cyber vault, our data is safe. Like we know we've done all the right things. Dell has worked with us to put in the CyberSense platform. We're monitoring it. We're protecting it. It's air gapped. Our data is good, so we don't have to worry about necessarily paying the ransom because we have a safe, secure backup. But if my environment is down because I've been hit and everything's infected, I'm not going around, and I think this is a misconception, I'm not going around wiping all my servers and reinstalling the operating system at 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 hours later, because there's a huge forensic investigation that's going on. We don't know what's been hit yet. We don't know what's safe. And that's why there's probably more twiddling of thumbs than people expect. If I'm not ready for it, if I don't have the clean room, if I don't have the equipment on site, if I'm not ready to, and I've not done the calculations to what is minimal viable business. And I know you've been part of some of those discussions. That's not an easy thing for customers to ask, because if they go out and survey the business, everyone puts their hand up and goes, "I'm mission critical. You can't run without my department, my team, my application."
And especially IT or IT security.
Yeah, they're asking the right questions, but it's not always easy to get the right answer, because it's some of it's obvious. It's your Active Directory, your payroll systems. Like there are core things that need to go into that platform. The other big lessons learned from that front, and again, anyone that's been through this will sound obvious. Hard copies. I need a printout of who is my cyber response team, what are their phone numbers, what are their roles and responsibilities, and in what order are we doing things? Because if your first response when you hit is I'm just going to go to Teams and ping somebody, well, that's all offline. It's all down. If your first answer is I'm going to open my email, I'm going to bring up the Excel spreadsheet, that's all offline. So it's a silly thing, but it's a really important thing. Like have a hard copy of it, and have this planned out. But it's the one thing that as much as I said, people are twiddling their thumbs, the business does not have at that time is time. They're a race against the clock to get everything back up.
And the revenue is impacted.
Everything is down. A massive revenue drain until the core systems are back up. Like how fast, how quickly can you start, taking orders again? Dealing with your suppliers. Like all of that is not the time to be sat around a room debating what you should do next. That should already be well defined. So we spend a lot of time doing the tabletop exercises, working through this with customers, working through the unexpected scenarios. But I think customers have a good grip on the backup, the resiliency. What they don't have a good backup is the restore process and the platforms and the infrastructure that's needed.
Well, we've seen recently, and very recently with a telecom provider, but in the past with schools, universities, hospitals getting hit, and core operations being impacted, even some fitter corporations being affected. And everybody thinks you have a hybrid data strategy, you have a hybrid data protection strategy, you have a cloud protection strategy. Um, but then is your cloud really safe?
Yeah, I mean the attackers don't go in and go, "Oh, I can see they've got a hybrid strategy. Let's not attack the other half." It's a very different to a disaster recovery. In a disaster recovery scenario, you're assuming that one of those two environments is down because of a power, natural disaster, whatever it is. In a cyber event, the first thing the attackers are doing is doing a lay in the land, working out how wide that environment, where that environment sits, and they're not going to trigger anything. They can do everything they can to stay hidden until they know that what they're about to do is going to cause the biggest impact. So the first thing they're going to do is say, do they have replication in cloud? Do they have another environment? Are they geographically spread? Let's make sure we hit all the geographical areas. That's why the air gap discussion is so important. Yeah.
And I do have a question for you down the road, but what I really want to understand then is uh, because you have AWS, Azure, and other top providers saying that we protect you if you use our backup. There's an assumption, and obviously that assumption has its own merits and cons. But cyber recovery vault has its own. And if you are using the cloud-based cyber recovery vault, um, how different is it, or how easy is it for someone to just turn on cloud backup features, or say, okay, now I'm protected versus when would I be protected?
So again, there's two parts of that. I think one is our set of tools run in the public cloud as well as on premises, to my previous point. So I'm not, this is less of a public cloud versus on premises discussion as it is most of the time, where is the customer's expertise?
Right.
Because if, I don't know, let's say 90% of your team is used to your on premises environment that's Broadcom and a VMware environment, and then you get hit with a disaster and your plan is to spin everything up into AWS or Azure, um, is everyone capable of doing that? Do you have the right expertise and knowledge? At what point do you make the connection to my point? And you got to clean everything up. Having it available doesn't mean I'm suddenly going to go, okay, well, let's spin them up and connect our corporate environment into that environment, because we don't know. Is the attacker immediately going to jump into that space as well? So it doesn't solve everything. The biggest thing that I think to think about, whether it's on-prem or cloud, is do I have the knowledge and capability? Is my automation tooling going to take care of this? Am I going from manual runbooks? Again, that's a big question. Having a runbook is one thing. Have I automated those, and into what environment is that automation?
So when you have such scenario, then when you brought up pretty well this point about a hacker who's monitoring your workload doesn't really want to start impacting everything right away. They're sensing, they're getting a feel for everything. They're hiding.
Yeah.
And they're looking at everything. So
they're going so slow to not be detected. That's
and so in that sense, paint us a picture. It's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
This is a big hospital. And suddenly systems go down. If let's talk about two scenarios. One, a customer without cyber recovery reward, and one with cyber recovery. What's the difference there?
Oh, the difference is it's not as a night and day difference. If they have a cyber recovery vault, they've invested in that air gap solution, they're not worrying about can they get the data back. Like that whole conversation of how much are we being asked for? What's our insurance payouts? How long is it going to take us to interact with this team? Can we trust this team? When do we get the key? How does the decryption process work? Like all of that goes away. I'm not worried about that because I know, because I planned for this ahead of time. I have a backup of my data, okay, in a way that is safe and secure. So it immediately simplifies the whole discussion. I am immediately in recovery. How do I spin this up? The question often comes to, is this customer already got a clean room, but they've already planned this out? They have, minimal infrastructure ready and raring to go, again, on-prem or cloud, but they've thought about this. If they don't have any of that, they've got to start working out what backups do we have? How far back in the backups do we have to go before we were impacted? That's going to take a long time. If I'm still using something like legacy tape, we're increasing our timelines even further. And as I said earlier, the one thing you don't have.
Server hacks stay quiet for a good few months.
Oh, at least. Yeah. And again, IBM do a phenomenal annual report, like the cost of data breach report. And, it demonstrates, to your point, when they get in, they're not in there for a week. They're in there for weeks, if not months at a time, because they know that their only chance of getting paid is actually having an impact. So if they think you're just going to be able to pull a backup from a week ago and ignore them, they're going to wait longer, and they're going to make sure they have the biggest impact.
And some companies may have already implemented a strong backup platform, and they may have already done some air gapping, but they still get impacted.
Yeah.
And so, what's different between that, and why can't ransomware just follow them into the data cyber recovery world?
Well, it comes down to the air gap and where the air gap is set up. I mean, setting up rules to make sure that backups can't be touched by anybody, that's one thing. But to your point, if they've been in the environment and they've been trickling in the attack and they've been encrypting every other row and things like that, and it doesn't get noticed, you just get sped into the backup. The other half of what we're doing is putting in tools like CyberSense, which are not looking for the same things as your antivirus on premises or whatever. They're not looking for signatures. They're looking for signs of an attack. And as an infrastructure provider, we're sort of at the lowest level. We're able to see what's going on in the infrastructure during an attack and look for those patterns. Look for what's going on. Use AI for what it's really good at, which is detecting anomalies, detecting things that shouldn't be happening. Check sudden fluctuations and changes, not signatures, not header changes. That's the difference. So it's a combination of its air gap. So the attacker, when they're jumping around the environment, this isn't connected. It's a one-way call. And two, if we and we've seen this firsthand, we put in a CyberSense, we put in a recovery vault with CyberSense, and immediately the customer starts backing up into that environment, and immediately there's something wrong.
Yeah.
We've seen that this is not normal for this type of workload. We think you're under an active attack, and that has happened more than a couple of times. So to me, that's the difference. That's the big difference between just having, a protected backup, a snapshot of the environment, and having an intelligent system that's air gapped.
So someone like me or others at ESK, we are familiar to a degree about CyberSense. We know how it does full content scanning,
Yeah.
but for a customer and for a company who doesn't understand the core nuances of CyberSense, do you want to share?
I mean, the high level overview is what CyberSense is doing is it's using AI to look for the changes in the blocks of data that we're transferring over. So we know the patterns of an attack. We know when you get hit with ransomware and all the different flavors of it, there are consistent things that will happen to your data in the back end. We're not talking about the application level. We're not talking about the way those attacks are actually carried out. We're talking about its impact on your storage system. So CyberSense is there to monitor that. It's looking for those changes. It's looking for those anomalies, which is not the same thing as I said, like an antivirus or a firewall or the scanning in a live environment. It typically is only noticed when we go to take a holistic view of the backup. And you're right, it's doing a deep scan of the entire environment. Sometimes that causes an interesting conversation, and you've probably had this with customers. Or we'll just back up. We'll do CyberSense. We'll back up everything. Well,
actually, I was going to ask you the next question on that.
Yeah,
it's like let's vault everything.
Let's vault everything. To me, it comes back to that minimal viable business. What are your crown jewels? What are your most critical assets? Those are the things you want to make sure we're putting in a cyber recovery vault, and that we are actively scanning all the time. Now, I will say, and you're going to see this later this year, we're bringing some of that technology into the live data center environment. We're adding CyberSense capabilities to more of our production equipment, because the sooner we can detect these sorts of attacks, the better off we are. And it's an overused phrase. It's not if, but when. And I get really annoyed when anyone says that and then they carry on talking. You have to pause and really think about what that statement means, because I think that statement is accurate. So if you're putting any effort into disaster recovery, you need to put in 3 times as much effort, 4 times as much effort into cyber resilience. And I think that is still a gap for a lot of customers. You're right, like Cyber Vault, and implementing that is the first step. Second step is the cyber sense, making sure it's being scanned. And the third step for me, and we're probably going to see more about this year, is the clean room, is an environment that is set aside, that is not connected to your network, but you are ready to rack and stack and get going to speed up the recovery time.
See, I'm a solutions architect. So when I look at anything, I look at the picture holistically. You are a CTO. You also look at things holistically. You are not ingrained into one small section or a narrow
It's
perspective.
impossible to be an expert at everything in
Yeah.
this thing.
So from that sense, cyber attacks aren't always done by external influences. They could also be an insider attack.
Yeah, malicious.
Someone who actually has key to the kingdom.
Yep.
How do you protect?
Black. So it's an easy answer, and this is going to sound again like marketing, but it's really not. It is adopting zero trust, and I don't mean that for a marketing buzzword. I mean actually adopting zero trust. We have a lot of experience in this space, but we do need to never trust, always verify. Nobody should have the keys to the kingdom. It should always be just-in-time access. And if you look through an actual zero trust implementation, all 152 controls that are in a full zero trust as NIST defines it, there's a lot of really important nuggets of information in that guidance and that guidelines the customers should be adopting. And one of them is, nobody should have the keys to the kingdom. Everything should be at an individual and at an equipment basis. And I think the same thing this is probably a separate conversation, but it should be applying to agents, AI agents. They should only have access to the tools they need at the times they should have access to it from the equipment that they should be using. Some of it is obvious, some of it is not obvious, but if you actually implement zero trust, which is not a small thing to do, because again, it's an organizational transformation. It's you going out there and asking the business for every piece of equipment and every user, what are the tools that you need to do your job? What pieces of equipment do you use? When do you use them? Where do you use them from? And cataloging all of that and updating it as things change. I'm aware that that is not an easy thing for anybody to do. But to my point, if these cyber attacks are happening and the statement it's not if but when is real, we can't overlook it. We have to say this is a massive job, and most organizations are already doing this. There's some way down the zero path journey. It is a journey. No one implements it overnight because otherwise everything would shut down. But we have experience. We've done this. We went through under a project called Fort Zero, which was to have our equipment in conjunction with a huge group of partners actually validated by the US DoD for all 152 of those controls. And we learned a huge amount going through that exercise. And I say to customers, it's not that I'm going to sell you that exact racket here, outside of some small exceptions. It's that we know what's missing. We knew we had to add in additional API calls. Knew we had to add in additional capabilities and functionality in order to pass that test. So you benefit from that to the customer. It means that we know we can get you there with our equipment because we've literally gone through that exercise and have had it all approved and validated and checked by a third party. So yeah, it's not just a buzzword. It is not just marketing. Zero trust is more important now because of AI and agentic platforms, because of the cyber landscape today than it has ever been in the past.
And if someone heard you just now and they suddenly think, oh, I might be already at risk. I don't know. I can adopt cyber world or the cyber economy world. But what if someone's already in my data? Are you able to detect it? Let's say I'll just pick a random number, 200 days or so. They've been in there. And now they adopt cyber recovery world. What's different? Can protect now or not something that is already in the world?
So I think the what will happen in that scenario, I kind of alluded to it earlier because it's happened in a couple of real
I would
examples.
love to get a little bit of a better scanning of that. Yeah.
Most customers don't know, and if they think that, give us a call, like now, not tomorrow. But we'll put that environment in place, and it's not magically going to get back that data that's already been encrypted. To your point, but we'll know it's there. We will have identified it,
is more
and
important.
we will have been able to give you some concrete information that says, yes, right now you have a problem. Let's deal with it. Let's start on the process. Let's start uncovering when it happened. How far back do you need to go? Can you go? We'll start the process with the customer. That's and again, we've seen it firsthand when this has happened. When we've put in a cyber vault, and not because the customer thought they were under attack, they had no idea until we put that in place and started seeing signs of this malicious activity carrying on. So cool the STI. It's not too late to start solving the problem. Yeah.
And the next one, I'm going to put you in a little bit of a spot here,
Okay.
because it's directly tied to your role. But I want just a honest advice from you here. If you want a Dell ball, let's say you were a CIO of a 5,000-person company, and you have limited budget, but you can only implement one technology first. Would you go Dell Apex first, or would you go Dell Cyber Recovery Vault first?
If I didn't already have a cyber recovery vault, that would probably be step number one, and then step number two would be the automation platform, because again, I need something that supports the direction of technology, but none of that is of any use if I'm not resilient. If I'm not able to turn around to the board of directors and say, if we get hit, we're good. That's problem more.
And so that's good to know, because obviously you need to protect yourself first before worrying about transformation. Most protection is focused on files or file system type data. What about relational databases? What about other type of workload that companies are running? But ransomware might encrypt some corruption foreign keys, which is not clearly visible upfront. Scramble some indexes and slowly keep growing with that. That doesn't really become visible right away. So how would you recover, or how would you identify in the first place?
Yes, cyber recovery vault, having an ANGAP system doesn't replace all of the rest of your cybersecurity practice. It's your last line of defense. So you're right. I think some of the new technology that's helping in this space, I mean, it would be great if we had DPUs everywhere and we were doing packet inspection on the network layer and looking for, and I've seen the glimpse of where we're going with some of this technology. It is absolutely about, and again, I don't want to come back to my previous answer, but if you're adopting zero trust, you're doing microsegmentation, what you effectively need to do is to make sure that blast radius is as small as possible. Yes, I can recover, but I need to make sure that when, again, not if, the attackers get into my network, they can't just move unilaterally everywhere, that they are constrained to wherever they got into, and that the hit that is going to be the impact that they're going to be able to cause is not going to be to the entire business. It might be to a business unit, it might be to an area, it might be to an environment, it might be to a subset, but it needs to be a subset. And again, it's one of the premises of adopting zero trust is to segment things off and minimize the impact. So because you're right, it's not easy, and it will happen even with the best technology. Well, because again, we're always trying to keep pace with the attackers. AI introduces a whole nother ballgame into all of this on both sides of the fence. So we need to be ready to respond, and we need to make sure that, again, if the attackers get in, they don't bring the entire business down.
Got it. And that's a philosophy in nature. There's a difference between being secure and being resilient. And most IT security teams focus on keeping the attackers out. But resilience assumes that they'll eventually get in.
Yeah, they will. And then we talked about, again, this is not new in the world of cybersecurity, like the perimeterless world has been around for a long time. It's just recognizing that truthfully. Again, it doesn't mean we don't have a perimeter, but it recognizes, to your point, that they will get in.
But how do you make someone understand, a CIO or someone who doesn't, maybe just has put their blinders on, or doesn't want to accept the fact?
The most powerful thing to do, run a tabletop exercise. Get them in a room, run through a scenario. I've been fortunate enough to sit in some of those, and they are absolutely eye-opening. And you'll watch the executive team suddenly realize that all of the thoughts they had, the plans they had, what they thought they would do, are not the things that they will actually need to do in the event of a disaster. It's a wake-up moment. It is absolutely. I'm glad this happened in this mock scenario. Now let's fix the gaps.
And you come across CTOs, CISOs, and others, and if you were to arise, what would be your advice to them? And you do in the first 1 hour.
Call us immediately. Call for an expert. Call for a team that has been through this before, that knows the process, that knows how to deal with the attackers, even actually deal with them if you need to get that key back because you don't have any other way of dealing with it. Don't deal with this alone. Call for an organization that has sat in those rooms, has been in those tense situations, probably multiple times that week, and can take all of the lessons learned from dealing with this roller coasters.
Thank you. Thanks very much, James. One last question. If you could go back and tell a CIO from your 10 years past experience so that they learn something, think of it like a letter to the younger self.
Yeah.
One thing that they needed to understand where infrastructure and security were heading compared to where you started. And it would save them a lot of pain down the road. What would that be? One lesson.
Automation. Upskill the team, invest in the team, invest in your talent, and focus in on automation. Again, like the amount you're able to deal with and respond to and transform if you solve that piece, if your IT infrastructure is fully automated, if your teams are experts in Terraform, Chef, Puppet, and Ansible, like the tool itself is not the question. The philosophy is what's really important. So again, if I was going back 10 years and building an organization that was responsible for their IT infrastructure, I would probably be spending a lot more on automation because it'll pay dividends.
Awesome. Thank you very much, James. I appreciate the time.
Thank
And
you.
I
Good to
look
see you in
forward to
person.
what might be said. And I look forward to having some more engaging conversations. This person has been down here.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'll have to cross again on various events. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate it.